Hello, dear colleagues. My name is Ekaterina, and I'm a methodologist in Sky Corporate Department. And this video is dedicated to teaching receptive skills, teaching reading and listening. But before we start, I must say that teaching receptive skills and receptive skills in general is a bit easier for our students than productive skills like writing and speaking, only because we only receive, perceive the information. We don't produce any information, we don't speak, we don't write. So reading and listening can be quite easy for the students, but not all of them. And of course, we need to know how to make these lessons more effective, more productive for our students, only because receptive skills are as important and productive skills. And when our students come to us and say, I only need to speak, or I only need to write emails at work, you need to explain them that writing or speaking, they come together with reading and listening. And if you are learning the language, you need to learn the language as a whole. And of course, just give your student a text to read and expect that your student will learn something from that. It's not right thing to do. Or give your student a listen it for 3 minutes and expect that our student will understand or again learn something from that. So when you are teaching reading and listening, you need to follow a certain plan. And we are going to talk about the stages of the lesson when we are teaching reading and listening today. And we are going to use the examples from the platform, so it's easier for you to make the lesson, to prepare for a lesson. Okay, so let's start with the stages of a reading or listening lesson. I will quickly go through all of them, and then we will talk about each of them in detail. So the first stage is pre-teaching vocabulary, which is an optional stage. Then we need to build an interest of our student. Your student needs to want to read the text. Then we are setting an activity for GIST, for our students to understand the general idea of the text. Then learners read or listen. And then we are setting a more intensive or focused activity, which is called activity for detail. Then, which is logically, learners read or listen again. And after that, we need to set an activity, speaking activity, based on the text. So our students give their opinion, or saying disagree or agree with the author or with the idea of the article, or vocabulary based. If the difficult vocabulary was used in the text, you may ask your student questions which have the vocabulary from the text, and you may ask your student to answer, to give the answers using the vocabulary from the text as well. So let's look at the stages more closely, and we will start with the building interest stage, only because these two stages, the first two stages, they can replace one another. We can start with building interest and then pre-teaching vocabulary, or we can pre-teach vocabulary and then build interest. It's up to you. It's up to your students' needs. And you can also do both ways, just to make your lessons a bit more different. Okay, let's start with the building interest. So here we need to make our students want to read the text. And how we do that? We do that with prediction. You may show your student a picture and ask what he thinks the text will be about, or if the text is about I don't know, festivals, for example, you can start with a personalized discussion. You may ask your students some questions like, have you ever been to festivals? What festivals you've ever been to? Did you like it? What didn't you like about it? So this sort of questions. And then you can show a quick video or related topic and then discuss it with your student, what again your student thinks about it. So don't forget that this stage is quite a short stage. You don't need to spend a lot of time on it. So just to build your students' interest, to understand what your students already know about this subject, and then you can move on to a different stage. But I can show you some examples from the platform, because we have a magical platform which gives us all the tips and advice we need. And that's how it looks. We have 3 pictures, and it's a picture from elementary level student general course. And you may ask your student, look at the photos and what can you see? Your student says, oh, I see some fun festival, yeah, and then you can say like, okay, what is on the picture number 1? Where is it? Yeah, where is the picture number 2? Where is picture number 3? Which do you think is the funniest one? Which do you think is the coolest one? Which would you like to attend, to take part in? And that's how you build your students' interest. This is another type of building interest. So here in a green box, you can see the tip for the teacher. So you're saying to your student that we're going to listen to short extract from the conference call. But first you may ask your students, what can you see on the picture? And it's like meeting or I don't know, conference call. And it's like, yes, great. And we are going to listen to 6 extracts from conference call. So what do you think each situation is about? And you are going through the list of problems before the listening. You're showing below in the slide. I just couldn't take a screenshot of all the slide, but then you're going through the list of problems before the listening and asking your students, so what do you think each situation is about? So this is the building interest stage. And then we are moving to pre-teaching vocabulary. So the main idea and the goal of this stage is to check the understanding of essential vocabulary, but you don't need to spend too much time on this stage. For example, if you're working with the platform, this essential vocabulary is usually underlined or highlighted, or these words are in bold, and you don't need to waste time searching for the words. But in difficult cases, when your student has troubles with understanding the text, or your student has a low level of, so doesn't know. And let's talk about pre-teaching vocabulary. And this stage is optional, as I said earlier, and we don't need to spend too much time on this stage. The main idea and the goal of this stage is to check the understanding of essential vocabulary, the vocabulary that will help our students to understand the text better, understand the listening better. And what we will do in this stage. So the words that are essential in the platform, if we're using the platform, already underlined, highlighted, or they are in bold, so you don't need to spend a lot of time looking for these words and writing them in the notes. You can just work with these words in the text already. But in some cases, when your student has troubles with the vocabulary, you may use the notes to write down the words, some additional words that you think will cause troubles and is better to be discussed before. And you can work out the meaning together. You can ask your student if your student knows the meaning of these words. You can use the dictionary. You can use the pictures. You can give the definition of the words in English to your student. But please do not use Russian in this case. Do not translate. If your student is a low-level student, you may use pictures. Pictures always help. Okay. So here is the idea of the which I was talking about earlier. So these words are usually underlined, and in this case they're also in bold. Some of the words can be presented like this in the red box, which your student cannot see. So you may use these words and write them down in the notes, but I would not recommend you to show this box to your student because it has already all the definitions. So your student doesn't need to think and doesn't need to even try to guess the meaning of the word. But these red boxes definitely help when we are pre-teaching vocabulary, or you may just ask some of them. So what do you think controllers mean? And most of the students can guess the meaning because it's very similar to Russian. Okay, and moving to the next stage is activity for gist. Activity for gist is set to make our students understand the main idea of the text. So we don't need to spend too much time again on this text, but we need to give our student some understanding of the text, what is happening, where it's happening, when maybe it's happening. So if it's reading, we are skimming or scanning the text just to pull out some information from there. And if it's listening, it just, again, we listen to understand maybe some noises from the train station or from the restaurant. And like this, we can understand that our the heroes, the main characters, the speakers are in the restaurant, for example. And again, our platform helps a lot in this case. You may see that it helps also by giving us the idea what type of task is this. So, for example, if I look at the task here, so it's a reading task. It takes 7 minutes, approximately 7 minutes, and it's reading for gist. So it's to understand the main idea. And this is the example of, in this case, listening for gist. So we need to listen to the introduction to the article and say, do you agree with psychologist or you don't agree? So you don't need to understand any detailed information. You just need to understand the main idea and say your opinion if the opinion of the psychologist matches the opinion of the student. And I also want to say and point out to them the task, which is read and listen. And in most cases, we have both options. We have the recording and below we have the text. And it also depends on your student and your student's abilities. And if your student deals with listening quite easy, you say just listen to the text without looking. Or if your student has troubles understanding what's happening, you may listen to the recording once, and then you may allow your student to listen and read at the same time. So your student may follow the text. Okay, and this is another idea of activity for gist. So we need to listen to the speakers and match the pictures, with the speakers. So they're probably talking about the houses, describing the houses without any detail. We just need to match the pictures with the speakers. So this is called activity for gist. And this is also a quite important activity. It's like a transitional activity before we're moving to activity for detail, only because it sets the atmosphere, it sets the mood. So our students can easily listen to the text again, and they won't be nervous because there will be so much information, and they need to complete the gaps, or they need to do some other activities. So they only need to relax, listen, and do some simple tasks at this point. Okay. And let's move to activity for detail. Activity for detail is a more complex activity. So here we need to complete a more challenging task and focus on details. We can give our students some more time for this activity. It's actually quite important, quite an important activity, only because when we are listening to other people, we are listening to the TV show, for example, sometimes it's important not just to understand the main idea, but to understand the details. Yeah, if our student attending a conference, yeah, in English, understanding the general idea could be not the best option here. We need to understand the details, so it's quite an important stage that we need to cover. Okay, so here are the examples of the tasks that can be linked to activities for detail. So our student listened to the text, and then we need to answer the questions. Which part of the house are these things connected to? So they are listening to text about the house. And why they are mentioned. So they have 8 different things, and you need to listen to the text very carefully to understand why this thing, when and why these things are mentioned. Before that, I usually give my students some time to look at the list, to concentrate. Maybe some words will be new for them, like parrot, for example, or cupboard, and we work out the meaning together, of course. Then I give my student time to listen, and then after that we discuss. Or this is another activity for detail. We listen to the call, and we need to complete the gaps. So it's usually a part of the conversation, which our student needs to listen very carefully and write down the words that are missing. And this is another example of activity for GIST. So here we listen to the final part of the interview, and we need to complete the gaps. Again, it's only the part of the interview, it's not the whole interview, but your student needs to write the missing words in the text. It's also one of the activity for GIST that you can find on the platform. The final stage is speaking activity. So here on the slide, you can see the possible type of activities, checking and summarizing the information, discussions, and problem solving. So I will show you the ideas that are on the platform. You can find them on the platform and you can actually use them. But if you want to make your lessons different and more interesting, you can of course add your own activity as you wish. So these questions, they're usually given in this orange-yellow box. You may use them. You may actually show them to your student and ask your student to read the questions and answer them, or you may read the questions to your student and your students answer the questions. Or there is another thing, you can give your student a task. So in this case, it's think about people you know who like each kind of music. So the text about music was listened. And do you agree with the article says about the personalities? So here is a more, again, personalized discussion, and your student talks about the experience, about people he knows, and yeah, makes it more personal. Okay, so as I said before, we need to combine all the skills, all 4 skills, yeah, which is speaking, reading, writing, and listening. And only if we are combining all the skills, we can get the better results. And you are, as a teacher and as a guide, help your students to need to help your students to develop all the skills, of course, and you need to remind your students every time that developing all the skills is a quite important thing, And you know, when your student wants a certain thing from you, yeah, you always can say that speaking is important, but we also need to know how to fish out some important information from the listening, for example. Okay, so dear colleagues, I hope that the video was very useful for you. I hope that you will use some of the advice, and preferably all of them, during your lesson. And it will help to make your lesson more productive and effective. And you will see more results. And as I said, my name is Ekaterina, and you may find me in Slack or Skype and text me if you have any questions, and I will try and answer them all. Okay, so thank you very much, and have a good day.